some news came out, speaking of Texas A&M, that Tennessee is going to Checker Neyland for Texas A&M. For those who don't know, Checker Neyland is where the stadium looks like a giant checkerboard. One section is orange, one section is white, one section is orange, one section is white. Looks like a checkerboard. Tennessee, every home game at Neyland Stadium this year will have done something different to this point. Against Austin Peay, they wore the Condrich Holloway retro jerseys, but in smoky gray format. So they were smoky grays, but in Condrich Holloway retro format, I guess is what you would say. And UTEP, they wore the all orange. So they didn't wear their traditional orange jersey, white pants. They wore all orange. Last Saturday against South Carolina, they wore their dark mode jerseys for a night game. And then against Texas A&M, I'm assuming they're going to wear their orange with white pants, but they're checkering Neyland. So every single week, they've done something a little bit different. The question becomes, does Tennessee need to go above and beyond to be trendy with things like this and even more, given what's happening across the college football landscape? Now, let me break this down a little bit more. Blue Bloods, in the age of NIL, don't have the inherent advantage that they used to. There's still the locational advantage, but Tennessee never really had that to begin with. Flash is going to sell a little bit. I've been telling people, keep an eye on the Big 12. What's happening in the Big 12 right now? They hired the former Rock Nation executive as their commissioner. They're looking at playing a game in Mexico. They've added Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah for next year, and Colorado, who has Deion Sanders, who is the ultimate Flash. The Big 12 has figured out exactly how to stay competitive with the Big 10 and the SEC in the changing landscape in college football. And when when the conferences inevitably break off and form their own league, the Big 12 teams will be there. Book it, because of how creative and ahead of the curve they've been. Deion at Colorado has people like Lil Wayne coming out with them, had DaBaby last week, which is controversial. I don't want to get into that, but it's really connecting and getting people that no one thought possible to get in college football to connect with his teams. That's the culture, despite the 2 losses, is having an impact in recruiting. Is Tennessee doing enough from their end to recruit? I'm actually going to say yes. And here's why. They don't have to do what Colorado does, not because of the fact that they're a blue blood or not a blue blood. There's a locational advantage, which is being near Georgia and South Carolina. Not the same locational advantage that the rest of the SEC has, but there is one there. On top of that, Tennessee's got that NIL money. They got the NIL bag, man. And that's huge because they can throw money at players, and the money is going to outweigh the trends or the flash with these kids. Okay, they're going to follow the money. And so, yeah, Lil Wayne may be in your locker room, but you can choose to have Lil Wayne in your locker room or make $300,000 more than you were going to make. It's an easy choice if you're a high school athlete. It just is. So I think Tennessee is actually fine. As a matter of fact, if I'm Tennessee, I caution against going overboard and looking a little desperate and becoming a bit of a laughingstock at that point. Things like, okay, the Checker Neyland works. People want checkerboard uniforms. Don't do it. They look horrible. They look square. They look lame. And you'll be laughed at more than anything for doing that. Just to give you an example, the Terps tried this, incorporating the flag into their uniforms back in 2011 when they had a new coach. They were trying to create a culture. Yeah, Maryland fans loved it. But it was a laughingstock for them across the rest of the country. Now, it didn't help that Maryland went 2-10 that year. If you do this stuff and then you lose, it becomes a pariah. Look at Derek Dooley with the orange pants. The orange pants looked lame from the start, and then Derek Dooley started losing. And so now no one ever wants to see anybody ever wearing orange pants again because of the Derek Dooley situation. The Smoky Grays looked epic. That was one thing where it looked epic. So because they looked epic, they could survive the fact that they were created during the Butch Jones years, because the Smoky Grays fit very well with the backdrop of Neyland Stadium, Knoxville, Tennessee in the fall, the Smoky Mountains. It's beautiful. The dark mode was also, Lane Kiffin started with the dark mode with those jerseys, and those look cool, particularly around Halloween, so it makes sense to bring those back. So overall, I think Tennessee has a base of what it should do to stay trendy. They have old traditions that they stick with, and they have mixed in some new ones. And I've told you guys for a while, just relying on old traditions is going to lose, because Tennessee's old traditions at one point were new. Tennessee's tradition has been breaking tradition. Remember, running through the T, they never did that under Robert Neyland. That started under Doug Dickey. They were the second school, in the SEC to recruit an African-American player. The first to actually play one significantly. They had the first black quarterback, the first black captain. They were very, very forward-thinking and embracing Title IX, which is why they became the mecca for women's basketball in the 1970s. Those were all big deals for them breaking tradition, and they had already established tradition before that. So tradition is, and Smokey came in 1953, so Neyland was never around for Smokey. So again, the tradition was at some point old tradition. And also Tennessee embracing Rocky Top as a fight song. Guys, Rocky Top is a country song. It's an old outlaw folk song about killing police. Just listen to the lyrics on Rocky Top. Once two strangers climbed old Rocky Top looking for a moonshine still. Strangers ain't come down from Rocky Top, reckon they never will. That's literally about murdering federal officials. That's what that song's about. It was rap before rap. So I think Tennessee is very, very trendy in a lot of ways. I don't think they have to go extra with it. They don't have to do what Colorado does. And the Big 12 is going to have to go a little bit extra because it doesn't have the same level of blue bloods that the Big 10 or the SEC is going to have, nor the NIL money, which is what matters. So that's a big deal. I want to address a question. Charles McFall, does the Haslam family still contribute a ton of money? So yes, I believe they do. As a matter of fact, I think Bill Haslam is now on some board, the former governor. But Jimmy Haslam, the business school is named after him. I do think Tennessee has wrestled power away from Jimmy Haslam, though, because of the embarrassment of how he handled everything with Tennessee running it from about 2008 to 2017, and then the whole trying to force through the Greg Schiano hire. So I think at this point, he, not by choice, has kind of been forced to just throw the money and stay out of the way at this point. I do think that because Jimmy Haslam having his hands all over the program nearly ran into the ground. The same way he ran the business that his daddy gave him into the ground, quite honestly. And so I think that was a huge problem for Tennessee. And if you question that, look at the Cleveland Browns right now. I feel sorry for the Milwaukee Bucks. The Cleveland Browns took the massive PR hit to get Deshaun Watson onto their team, and they're still not going to the playoffs this year. So that's Jimmy Haslam for you. Jimmy Haslam has the unique distinction of, I believe, going, 0-6. He did go 0-6. He did have an 0-16 team, and I think he went 1-31 over 2 years owning the Browns. Just amazing accomplishments at failure. He's very accomplished at failing at what he does, if that makes sense. So he's accomplished at having no real accomplishments for himself. So yes, I'm sure he's throwing some money at Tennessee, but I think Tennessee finally has the right leadership in place to tell Jimmy Haslam, stay away from the program. You can contribute, write a check. That's it. We're tired of you. Because Jimmy Haslam was going to run it into the ground if he stayed in charge, because he did run it into the ground, quite frankly. He is the biggest reason for the decade of dysfunction. I think he forced through the Derek Dooley hire. He tried to force through the Greg Schiano hire. He wanted his puppet as athletic director, from Dave Hart to John Curry. He was just he was the Dan Snyder of college football boosters. And now he's the Dan Snyder of NFL owners because he owns an NFL team and he's failing miserably. So, and now he's going to be the Dan Snyder of NBA owners. So you just have to give, I think the leadership now is making moves for people that are questioning why they're trying to raise money elsewhere, including charging for the spring game. I think that's part of it. They don't want to be total slaves to one booster the way they had been in the 2000s and 2010s. And that's what they were with Jimmy Haslam. So I think it's a big deal. I think Tennessee is finding ways to stay trendy, but I don't think they actually have to do too much. Someone brought up a little while ago, G. Smith, you say, we are the real checkerboard team. I hated when Kentucky wore them. Yeah, but people saw that on Kentucky, and no one thought Kentucky's the checkerboard team. And look, I have to be honest. Blue and white checkerboard jerseys look a little bit better than orange and white. When it's orange and white, it looks a little lame, guys. I'm sorry. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Checkerboard end zone's great. Checker Neyland, great. But orange and white checker pants, I just don't think that works. I'm sorry. You got to know where your style works and where it doesn't. I know it looks good on me. Green looks good on me. Blue looks good on me. I'll be honest, orange doesn't look that good on me.